In the brown ring, we have results. This is for Kata.
When I first saw that, that immediately looks to me like doing an arm drag, pulling it across. So even if it's from here, grabbing it here on the other side, opposite side, pulling it this way, right? And then if you have this pivot, you can clear here, punch here, anchor with your arm that way.
What I was thinking was, since you're going opposite directions, usually that could be a trip or something like that, or a pull, and it makes sense for your movement because you're stepping forward and throwing into that leg as well. So if the movement's like this, it makes sense if I'm grabbing onto something and I'm pulling this way and I'm trying to take him down with that sweep. And if that sweep doesn't work, your next movement is a round block, right? So you're coming from here and I pivot back so I can take him down this way as well. So it's pretty much exactly what that Kata trip. It doesn't work, so I try to take him down like that.
Our fourth place winner today, please help me congratulate Tracy Eisenhardt.
So anytime we see like side-to-side shuffles, which we saw in this part here, most likely you're trying to step behind your opponent, right? You're trying to get at them at an angle or coming at them, cutting through their guard. So even if he has, like, if he's throwing a punch, most likely if I'm sideways to him, I'm trying to get to here. And that's perfect for the leg because I can just either knee or take him down like this or go for the sweep, whatever. And after that, it's an elbow. So all these can be ways to pull him down to the floor.
If you're behind somebody like this, and you're not going to necessarily do like an inside crescent, you got to remember like you could use your foot like kind of like pumping a gas pedal, right? So you're here, pinning them down this way, and then stepping across that way and driving back into the floor. So that's one way to think. Like, don't get too stuck like on the idea that, oh, anytime like this happens, I have to be smacking it that way. Sometimes it's just to show you that you're doing something here and bring your foot up and down again.
So after that, I think you throw an elbow and you slide back for something going forward, something going down, and punch. So usually when we see something like this, it's probably like you're pulling down the head. That's what I'm thinking. It can be like a back knuckle, blah, blah, blah. That's pretty common, but if I'm already here, it makes sense for me to just swim up and grab behind the head. And then from here you can throw your punches or do whatever you want, but it's pretty, I'd say it looks like that.
Yeah, because like the whole idea of you being able to really stand here and back knuckle block,
yeah, that's
pretty, like, it's not going to happen that way. So I know we tend to do Kata really rigid sometimes, but that's also the reason why sometimes if you mess with like level changing within your Kata, it can kind of make other stuff kind of come out. So even if you are using it to like grab the head, it's going to be really hard for me to drive up in here and grab the head if he's pushing down. But if I'm using my stances to come up and then pull back down, it does something different, right? So even in sinking versus just doing here in a real stagnant position, right? So drive up with your hips, pull down with your hips.
You could even think of the first one as like a disengaging, right? So
Right.
if I pop here to grab, so I can take you down this way. That works.
Yeah, whatever, right?
Our third place winner, Division 25, Mary Chiabatati.
Maybe integrate your hips more into the movements as well, because we noticed some of your strikes were very shoulder oriented, and instead try to realign that shoulder to make the power drive from the hips instead. So I think it was like this thing here. Instead of doing just a shoulder thing, maybe drive your hip up into it like an uppercut here, and also sink down with it as well. A lot of times, instead, if he goes in for a shoot or something, and I frame here and I throw some knees, I can just go straight down and just drop them this way. Instead of trying to push with my arm, I'm actually just sinking my hips, right? Just like the Kata shows, I'm not doing this. I'm literally anchoring him to me and just dropping down.
Even if you're in here, and if you're able to come up here and push across this way, I mean, if you're actually able to grab that way, right, and put from here to the inside, pulling down here, or even turning, pulling down this way, and then you have it in a place where you get an advantage kind of a choke on, right? So reaching up and grabbing, pulling down. If you did it all in one, as a turn coming in.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it is.
Right.
Because he goes crosswalk up and then he turns.
Yeah.
So that's
even if it, I guess like you could even do, if you're in here, because it doesn't mean you're, like this is the beginning, right? It could be this is the beginning, and this is how it also happens, right? So it's just, you're grabbing, anchoring, pulling.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Working away on the second place today. Great job, Kelly Norris. And in first place today, Marisol Blue.
And it's just hooking. So even if it's here, it's hooking this way.
Yeah.
Kicking.
I like that it emphasizes the hook.
Oh yeah.
Rather than like, because a lot of katas actually show the grab part, but we actually been working on this for a while now too. You can also grab without physically grabbing, because you're having this tension here, and also you create an angle so that it's kind of stuck to you.
Yeah.
And you don't want to, if you're not too in tune with like touch sensitivity, then it makes sense to try to just redirect something and then pop them back in. Right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, if you don't have to grab, like grabbing this way creates another split second of you having to open up your hand to do something else. Whereas like if you're just here and you hook, anchor, it's really easy to pop, right? Because your body will kind of do that by its own. But if you do this and then you grab, your body tends to just want to keep on grabbing and holding on, so then you go with this hand, right? But if you're doing this, then everything's still kind of free and open for you to do so. I would say the only other thing is like, just try to open up your body a little more in your stances. You look a little closed down to me, just a little too shoulder heavy, right? So try to put your shoulders back a little more, kind of opens you up a little bit.
yeah, when you're able to put your shoulders back, it also emphasizes movements on your lats too. Because you can't push against things. If I'm closed, I can't do this. But if I open up, I'm engaging my lats to push down. So then it's a larger muscle group. You're using less work.
Yeah, so like it's kind of like you have to think of like all these gatas. Every single movement everything's kind of like a rubber band, right? There's parts where it needs to be tight and close, and there's parts where it needs to be open and broad, right? Like you can't do this closed up. But if I come here and open, push my chest out, pull back, then I can actually do something, right? And then immediately, boom, I'm closing back in again. So it's kind of, that's why we kind of think of gata as less super stagnant, going in here and then throwing it really, really straightforward. Instead, you could, do stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it's more dynamic that way.
Awesome job to all the women in Division 25. Now we also have results.
Your cat stances for me were a little bit wider than I do them. I mean, if that's what you're comfortable with right now, that might be y'all's thing. But generally speaking, when I do it, since I'm thinking like I'm trying to drag somebody down into my center, I tend to like close. I don't have my feet this wide apart. I generally have it closer because I'm thinking I'm pulling something down. So even when I'm doing that and I'm striking here, like the strike, my feet are still pretty close because the strike immediately after that is pushing off and coming into the next movement. So
yeah, think about pulling them down with your legs or your hips rather than pulling with your arm, right? Because sometimes your cat stances look like you're leaning over, rather than sinking down. So that might be something to keep in mind.
Yeah, and your shoulders should also kind of be loose. Like the only time you're gonna bow up is when you're going in a clinch kind of situation. When you're doing kata, you want to try to keep your shoulders relaxed as much as possible, and only really tense up when you're doing like the striking kind of movements and stuff like that.
That makes sense. That way you can engage.
Yeah,
It's more like a whip
Yeah.
than anything else.